work with. It's more of okay, you may be technically assistant, but I pretty much am like 1A, 1B with them. So I try to find situations where I can do more with less.
Okay. Well, the reason I brought that up, Greg, and I'm glad you're on, because your enthusiasm and what you're doing actually is ahead of the curve. None of us on board have been as progressive as you are, but you're young. You're in the game. You're in the communication with young kids, young men, familiar with technology. And I'd like you to introduce yourself before we get on uh, with the topic, which is really the experience of winning. And anybody on here who's been successful and winning a championship. Now, I want to preface it. It's not the most important thing to win the medal. It's what you accomplish in your coaching when you strive to win. So I'm a big believer in win-win coaching, which is just doing the right things. And I think I know everybody on here has got the philosophy that it takes to be a champion. So, Craig, can you introduce yourself? Give us your background and don't be modest because I'm going to pass on your emails that you share to me, and I'm sure you're going to get people that will subscribe and join on to it. Right now, I've subscribed to Daryl's, and it can keep me busy 24/7 reading his articles and his videos. And I've got a lot of things I'm dealing with, so I haven't subscribed to yours yet, but I'm hoping to shortly. But time is of the essence for me. So, Craig, please introduce yourself. Then we're going to begin. I'll introduce Ken, and everybody else on here is quite familiar with one another. But I think it would really be helpful for you to give us an introduction.
Well, first off, it's every Sunday at 8 a.m. and it should only take you 10 minutes as you're drinking your coffee to hopefully get through a newsletter. But yeah, I know a few faces on here. Tim, Hal, been in contact a little bit, but Greg Revac out of Columbus, Ohio, currently, originally from Cleveland. Been coaching similar philosophy as you guys. My first ever coaching job I had as a volunteer. We read the book Inside Out Coaching. I forget the author, but Football Guy. To which it was already like an epiphany in my frustration as a player of like we never went beyond the ice, and I wanted a little bit more. So for me, it's always one day better. Just continue to improve and create a culture of we get better. Very similar to Don Granado right now with the Buffalo Sabres. So do that. Was coaching, moved to Columbus with my wife. So through that, what I was doing in the back end, in the background, all these things I was creating, that I was really frustrated. I couldn't find good content out there. I decided to publish that. So it became a newsletter and then morphed into having conversations to the podcast as well. So Hockey IQ newsletter, Hockey IQ podcast, and continued to look around, network in Columbus, and finally found a situation I thought was absolutely perfect. I can make a large difference at everything from K through 12 along some great people. So getting back in the ice rink this year. So I'm excited to get going. So Wally, did I miss anything or any areas you want to make sure I answer?
No, that's good, and I'm going to get on with. I had no idea uh, where we would go, but I want Ken Babey, and I'll give him a little bit of a preamble to Ken. I've known Ken all my life. In fact, not many people here might know that Ken and I both applied for the same job at SAIT many years ago, and he got it, and I didn't. And that speaks to his credibility and ability, his educational background, and he stayed with that job at the college, SAIT, Southern Alberta Institute of Technology. How many years, Ken?
27.
So the number of years here, and Greg, you're on, and your enthusiasm, your intelligence, your articulated ability is really impressive. But you're just a puppy, and learning comes with experience. And everybody else on board, and I know everybody here has won a championship. And I thought, we're talking about the score clock here. We're not necessarily talking about growing citizens and a better tomorrow and that kind of thing. At the end of the day, um, the judgment is based often on the outcome. So, Babs, you're not the oldest dog here, as Tim said. I think I am, or maybe hell, I don't know. But we'll all have a chance, I think, to talk about successes. But Ken, in particular, uh, Ken has head coach international teams at World Championships. He's how many Olympics, Ken, have you led the sledge hockey program for Canada?
Two.
Two. So that's 2 cycles. It's a number of years. But I wanted to focus today on the state college position, a bit of story, describe your championships, how you won them, what it took to create that program, and whatever you want. How many championships did you win with that at that college?
7. I think it was 9.
Okay. A good number. So Ken, I'm going to turn it over to you to just talk about your experiences, the things you think that you did that made a difference, what you might have learned from some of the mistakes, and just generally, all of us have done the same thing as you. We've coached, we've tried things, we've experimented, some things worked, but we want to hear your story to begin with, and we'll see where we get with everyone else. Okay, Ken, take it away, buddy.
Thanks, Wally. I got the job, Wally, because I was way cheaper than you were, so that's why they took me. Well, good to see everybody. I'm glad I could come on. I'm usually on ice on Thursdays, guys. So that's I've enjoyed the times I have been here, but I'm on ice Thursdays during this time. But they canceled the ice this week, so I was able to come on. So, yeah, it was great. 27 years I spent at SAIT. I loved the people at SAIT in general, and I loved the school. It was a blue collar technical school. Had a strong work ethic, and all the people had that work ethic. And I guess that's what we had to establish at SAIT, was some kind of an identity for our men's hockey program. And we started with the work ethic part because it suited our blue collar school. And I think we established an identity and a philosophy, and then you have to, find people, whether it's your support staff or people within a department or people or your athletes, that you got to match your philosophy and the vision that you kind of have for the program. And I wanted us to be the best in the conference. And at that time, it was Perry Pern at Nate was the top dog, and Red Deer and Mount Royal. And so I wanted us to rise to that level and, trying to get better every day. So, that's where I think it all started for me in our days. And I know Tim and Tom and other college guys are on this, but in our days, you had to either be a teacher in the school or an administrator in the school to be coaching, part of a full-time job. It wasn't a full-time hockey coach like they are nowadays. I really don't know what they do with their time, but I hear they're getting good pay. They're certainly not teaching courses before practices and getting back to work at 8 a.m. Monday after a road trip on the weekend. Anyways, it was a great career, and I loved it very, very much, and that's why I stayed so long. Yeah, it wasn't until 1997 actually that we won our first championship. So it took about 9 years to get there, to be honest with you. It was a tough league. Besides Perry, we had Babcock coaching the league for a while. We had Al Ferdchuk, Scott Atkinson, Mike Johnson. There's some very, very good coaches that they had in this conference that you had to be sharp and you had to be on your toes, so to speak, all the time. And like you mentioned, you had to come up with new ideas, different ways to kind of compete with them because we didn't necessarily have as strong a team in those early years as those other teams, but we held our own because we started competing harder and working harder, and that was based on our philosophy and our identity. And you know what? For me, what I used to do is I built a program around the guys that they got some scholarship money, and they got their scholarship money if they maintained a 2 GPA, and they were in good standing with the team and with the athletics department and with the league in general. And then we added another piece, a community service piece, because I really thought that these guys had to give something back to the community, and by doing that, they would be a little more proud about what they were doing at SAIT in terms of being hockey players. Because a lot of them in post-secondary in Canada, in those days anyways, and the guys I got at SAIT, they felt like it wasn't they didn't reach their dream. They all wanted to go to the NHL. Like Greg, you had mentioned about your kids in high school there. They all wanted to go to the NHL, and they had this dream, and then that didn't happen. So they thought maybe go minor pro. Probably didn't happen either. So they came to SAIT to get an education. And they felt, I don't know, I just felt like it wasn't, I don't know how to explain it. It wasn't what they really wanted. So I wanted to give them something so it could play with a little bit more honor and pride in our game. But by that process, a few things came out of it, I thought. We started getting more people interested in so they'd have to do four community service events a semester to get their money. And so it would be anything from running practices for minor hockey teams. They'd have to find a team to work on and do that, or just a variety of things. And then what we found was that we started getting more and more people coming to our games because they started knowing who this player at SAIT was and getting a relationship with them. And also our hockey school started to get stronger too. We started getting more numbers in our hockey school because of it. So it was a good spinoff, and it just happened by accident, to be honest with you. But I felt that was a key component. The guys had to do something on the ice, but also in the community and keep their marks up at the same time. Yeah, so most of the players I would get were from Saskatchewan Junior Hockey League because I was from Saskatchewan. I had some good contacts to start out with, and then Alberta rural areas mainly, and then BC Junior Hockey League from more of the remote areas there, the northern BC guys, some in central like Merritt, those kind of teams. So mostly we were building our team around kind of blue collar, hardworking, physical type of team, and that was our identity, and that's how we played. And once we got going, we got rolling. Our success was pretty good from '97 until 2014 when I left SAIT. That's when we won 9 of our championships. So we won 9 championships over 17 years. I think we had 7 straight first place finishes, and we were a 2-year school, so you're always recruiting, you're always flipping guys over, and I had to build up a really strong relationship with all those junior programs I mentioned. And Western Hockey League guys, we got some of them, but I would probably cut as many Western Hockey League guys as I kept, just because they didn't have the positive attitude towards playing ACAC or SAIT hockey. And so I would give them a shot, and then if they didn't work out by Christmas, I would move on from them. So that's how we kind of built the team and built the structure of our program. And we created a fundraising organization called Trojan Hockey Alumni Association, which allowed us to fundraise and do a few casinos and things like that, so we could offer tuition scholarships. Yeah, so that's just how I kind of built the program around that concept. And I was also, as I was teaching, I became the athletics director about 10 years in, because our ex-athletic director was the basketball coach, and he resigned over the summer, and I was actually running hockey school, and they came downstairs. I remember this, forget who the guy's name, he was a director, he came down and asked me, do you want to be the athletics director for a year? And I said, yes. And it ended up being 17 years of athletics director and still coaching. So it was busy times, but it was good times. And thank God I had a great wife and supportive family, and we had a good run of it. So that's kind of like how we built the program and what the foundation of the program was about. I'll take a break here. Somebody had any questions, comments?
Ken, Tim Bothell in the chat had put up a question about, can you ask the question, Tim?
Sure. Well, I'm just wondering what you taught when you were at SAIT.
Oh, I started teaching phys ed. We had so at SAIT back in those days, it'd be 88, 89, they had 2-year diploma in recreation facility operations and management. So these are guys and girls that would be working in rec centers. So we have, it was a full program. I had 123 students at one time. And I taught the couple activity classes, but I also taught the sports administration and leadership courses because I had a master's degree in that area.
Nice. Ken, listening to your talk so far, I'm really impressed with what you did and what you learned from what you did and where you took it. And it isn't just on the bench in the moment and winning that particular game. The foundation of what you created in terms of the identity to begin with, leadership, is just, that sticks out with me. And the oddball question is, I'm just going to ask you, what mistakes did you make and what did you learn from them?
No, man. I made so many mistakes, couldn't believe it. But well, I learned that you have to involve more people around you. I've always been an independent type of person because of I don't know, just the way I grew up and just the way I was. And I got left home at 16, and I've always been independent and made my own way. So, I learned that you can't do everything yourself. So you have to involve the people that are helping you or want to help you so that they can feel part of it, and you can get their ideas. And I learned that over my coaching career. And I learned that emotion is good, but sometimes too much emotion is negative, will affect your thought process for sure on the bench and decision making, and also will affect the people around you. And so because I'm pretty emotional guy when I was younger, and sometimes I wore too much on my sleeve, so to speak. So I learned to calm down and just step back a little bit and maybe think a little bit more before I spoke. And but you still had to bring the emotion as part of your personality, but you could use it better at the right times and in a positive way. Those are a couple things, Wally. I think just including everybody in the process, including everybody in it, and just being a more calmer leader, I guess I'd put it that way. Technically, well, as you know, Wally, I went through all the coaching programs you could ever go through. I took every one of them. Hockey Alberta, Hockey Canada, NCCP. I went as high as you can go to all of those. And I think I learned a lot about coaching and teaching people that way. And I learned a lot of the technical information that way. But you know what? For me, it wasn't the technical information wasn't as important as learning about myself and about how to motivate people, because at SAIT, our players, as I mentioned, most of these guys, they didn't know what the hell they were even coming to SAIT for. They're just coming to play hockey. But I'm the proudest that I would probably say about 85% of our guys left state with a diploma, or in some cases a degree once state started granting degrees, and they're out working in the community, and they're viable citizens for society. And a lot of these guys are coaching and went on to coaching. So, you like to feel you had a little piece in that. The championships were great, and I love the championships and the compete. But as I got older in life, it's more proud of the off ice stuff.
Anybody else got any questions for Ken? I know Ken very well. Ken, I'm going to ask you to share a story after I sort of do a little preamble. Ken was teaching a hockey school at St. while he was coaching, and Dave King had me working in Japan with the Japanese men's team, and he was running a summer camp, and he couldn't make this particular camp, and he asked me to go, and he said, "Is there somebody you could take with you?" And I picked Ken. I phoned him, and "Konnichiwa, Ken, you came with me," and what an experience! The typhoon we went through before we landed, and talking hockey, we kept just use that as a distraction. But I just wonder, there's one little situation that occurred when the Japanese players, it was an under 20 team, they're supposed to be so respectful and obedient, and there was guys breaking curfew, and I wonder if you could tell the story about Rio and his reaction when he discovered that. So go ahead and tell it, because one of the things about sport is you got to know the culture you're working in. It's easy when you live in North America and coach in America, in North America, because we're familiar with the culture. But go ahead, Ken. This will give the people a little bit of an eye opener.
Yeah, no, thanks. Yeah, that was a wonderful experience, Wally. Going over there, I remember, Wally, your point about on the airplane, Wally. So we're on this airplane flying Vancouver to Japan. I think Osaka was where we were going to land. But anyways, all of a sudden we're in flight here, and Wally's showing me defensive zone coverage, as he always would, with a napkin, and he's got it out, and he's showing me his positioning and defensive zone. And all of a sudden we hit this typhoon, and all the luggage trays open up top, luggage is flying, the plane's turning sideways, dropping. Wally, like you said, kept showing me D-zone coverage, as we didn't know if we were going to crash or what was going on. Anyways, we got through the typhoon. We landed in Osaka and made our way to Obihiro, which is in Hokkaido, which was in northern Japan. Beautiful place, beautiful country, really nice people. And this was their training site. And they had a training center there where they housed all the athletes and the staff, and they ate all their meals there and everything. So one night, the first couple of days, I think it was before, my job was just to kind of lie in the background and give Wally some tips or give the coaches some observations. So they used to have them get up and have a morning run around the field and around these set of bushes on the other side. And so I went over a little earlier and went in the bushes on the other side just to see if these guys really did do the run or not. And I remember coming back and telling Wally, I said, "Wally, half these guys, as soon as they hit the corner out of their coach's view, they start walking." So that was one thing we addressed with the coaches, that part about it, that the guys are cheating on them. And I think that started them thinking that they were starting to feel a little bit embarrassed, maybe a little bit at that time. Then a couple of days later, I think it was, 3 guys had missed the curfew because we were kind of isolated, but there was a little kind of a town not too far away or a shopping spot or something. They weren't that late, but they got back and they weren't, didn't seem like they were drinking or anything. They were just probably out looking for girls or whatever at that age, right? These guys are 16, 17. So the coach Rio Yamada, and as Japanese culture, it's very much he's in charge and you never dishonor that. And so we were in our room. Wally and I shared a room, and we were in our room, hanging out. We were having a beer, or whatever. And then all of a sudden, we hear this Japanese, hi ya, hi ya. We hear this smacking and this loud yelling. So poke our heads out the door, and here they've got the three boys down on their knees with their hands behind their backs, and Rio Yamada is just kicking the crap out of them and hitting them and everything over this dishonor that they had showed. And I went out, we both went out to try and stop it, and the assistant coaches blocked us and said, no, this is Japanese honor. You can't get involved here. Anyways, they stopped, and then they banished the guys out of the facility. And I think Wally, we went looking for him. I think Wally found him. But anyways, we brought them back and put them downstairs in a room that we found that was open. And I remember turning to reach up to the cabinets, where there's some cabinets there, to look for some bedding for these guys. And I turn around and they're all on their knees. They thought we were going to kick the crap out of them. Remember that, Wally?
Yep, I do.
Anyways, they spent the night down there, and then we re-engaged. Wally did a great job of speaking to the coaches, especially Rio, the head coach, and got them to re-engage them back into the team, because they were good players, and there's no way that they would be able to even stand a chance of competing against Canada. They were coming over here to play in the under-18 tournament. It was held in Nelson at that time, Nelson, BC, small rink against Canadian American teams. They'd just get hammered. So they needed these guys to help them get through that. So Wally did convince them to take them back. But yeah, I tell that story as an example. If you think discipline's tough here, you should go to Japan.
So I just wanted to, looking at the other group here, I'm sure all of you have been involved as coaches on staffs, be it assistants, that have won championships. And your stories, all of our stories are different. I have high school successes in a controlled environment where the identity is created by the school atmosphere and usually dependent on the school's jurisdiction. And sometimes the principal has a great influence in that school. But I'm wondering, anybody out there, it's really important that you get to share your stories and your background. And I'm going to begin with Hal. You've been around a long time, Hal, and over your many years, you've had, and I'm thinking of, okay, where you've actually achieved the ultimate and maybe won a championship, and why you did, and just a little bit of a story about revealing how you dealt with players and people and coaches and that
Sure.
kind of thing.
Yeah, we had, well, a little different down here in Minnesota versus the rest of the United States, because especially in youth hockey, all of our kids go to the same school. And so the Bantam team that I had that ended up at the national tournament, all the kids have the same zip code. And we're out playing against the Los Angeles Junior Kings, who the only thing they had in common is they were all Americans. And the Madison Capitals, they recruited kids from all over the country. And they also played twice as much as we did, because they were all AAA teams. So Minnesota didn't really go to those tournaments very long. I had actually coached that team, which was the last Tier 1 Bantam team to go to a national tournament from Minnesota. And that was the team that had Blake Wheeler on it. And I think actually there's 3 kids on that team that are still playing professional hockey. And I think that was in 2002 or 2003. That was an interesting team because we had a lot of skill. Everybody wanted to be on the power play. Everybody wanted to be on the penalty kill. I had a really great manager. and he he was a parent of a third line kid. And he told all the parents that the practices were closed. They couldn't come and watch practice. I didn't know this till after the season. So that kept the parent interference away pretty well. A guy told me once, well, I suppose all you had to do was just open and close the door on the bench. And, well, I thought that actually one of the more challenging teams to coach because there was a lot of talent on it. And, they're 14-year-old boys, right? So there's a wide range of developmental stuff on there. We did not lose a game in Minnesota. We tied one. We outshot them 60-4 and tied them 2-2. We went up to Canada and won Silver Sticks. We did lose one game in the preliminary round, but we went on to win that in Double-A. So it's ironic, how these things happen. We come back, we win the state tournament pretty easily, and now we're going to go to nationals, which is a couple of weeks later. And Don Lucia's son was on the team. Don was the coach at the University of Minnesota at the time. Had been the coach at Colorado College, and before that up at Fairbanks. And he comes to the meeting and says, well, I think it's a complete waste of time to go to the national tournament. Well, thank you, Don, for all your support. And then one of the Minnesota hockey guys, when we got out to Colorado Springs with the tournament, he says, you're going to be sorry you came here. I go, what are you talking about? He says, well, you're going to get beat, and you probably will regret, not winning in your last couple games of an unbelievable season. I said, well, I beg to differ because I'm not sure winning it is the only experience that these kids will get out of this. And, we knew it's kind of a stacked deck. And then our friends at USA Hockey, they changed the format of the tournament when they saw who was coming. They changed the whole format and realigned us. So we ended up playing LA and Madison Capitals in the first round. And then another team from Philadelphia, I think. I can't remember. Oh, the Cleveland Barons. So we lose to the Caps and to LA Junior Kings, and then we have to play the Barons. All we need to do is tie the Barons, and we can go on to the next round. 18 minor penalties we had. We didn't have 18 all year. And so, and we lost the game like 3-2 or something like that. We were shorthanded literally the entire game. And so that was a little disappointing, but the kids still remember it as one of the best times they ever had. And playing against, Wheeler's in the National Hockey League, the kid from Madison, I can't remember his name, but he's still playing. I think he plays for Phoenix now. Those kids were great hockey players. So that was an interesting one. I don't know how much more you want to hear. I took a junior team to New Jersey to play in the national championships. In those days, they called it Junior B. And I don't know what we'd call it today. Tier 3, Tier 2, I don't really know. We were undefeated here in Minnesota. We go off to there, and we end up in the championship game against the New Jersey Rockets, which is a pretty well-known organization. One of their kids went on to play in the National Hockey League. We didn't have anybody that went on afterwards, but we ended up in the championship game in this rink. It had 2 sheets. It was the only game going on, and they put us in a locker room big enough for a squirt team. They had like 10 locker rooms, but they gave us this little tiny one. So we had guys out in the hall. And late in the second period, we're winning like 3-2. And the hometown fans aren't happy about this at all. But the hometown officials came to their rescue. And we had 5 minor penalties in 3.5 minutes. And so we were 2 men short until they caught up and got ahead. And then they never blew another penalty after that. So anyways, when you're from Minnesota and you travel around the country, we're not very well liked in the rest of the country. So, but there's a thing. My son was on a Bantam team I coached in Minnesota, and they won the state tournament. And he was playing at a very small school, private school. And I was helping the team. I wasn't the head coach, but because I was coaching high school at the same time. And I had already told those kids, I said, there's this thing called the white light, which when you work really hard and you win something, there's like this amazing white light, this sort of glow that happens. And I told them about that before the tournament. And afterwards, after they won it, my son on the way home, he goes, "Dad, I felt the white light, but I don't feel like a champion or something." Again, they're 14 years old. So it was pretty cool. I mean, they were the smallest Bantam program in the state of Minnesota, and they beat the biggest. And 3 months later, over complaints by some of the big programs, his school's program, their affiliate agreement was not renewed by Minnesota Hockey, so they couldn't play anymore. And one of the parents called me and said, "What did we do wrong?" I said, "What you did wrong is you won." And they didn't like that. So.
Well, listen, Hal, I wanted to interject because when you began, and Ken alluded to it in his story, it was great to win the championship, but what he did with his program in terms of the guys that have gone on in their communities, he was letting players go because they couldn't fit in with the right attitude to be a good teammate. Everybody coaches differently and has different experiences, and yours in Minnesota is unique to you.
Yep.
Every one of you have a story to tell. My first year of coaching is just about the insanity of choosing to coach. My favorite coaching experience, best coaching experience, was a 0-7 football season. I didn't know a thing about football, and I was working in special ed and moved to a new school, St. Mary's High School. Went into the phys ed office because I had phys ed degree and I was teaching special ed, and just introduced myself. And they had no coach for their junior football team, so I stepped up and volunteered. But that year, never having played 12-man football, playing 6 in small town Saskatchewan, only taking one course at the University of Saskatchewan on 12-man, I said I would do it. The school had a reputation for football. And so I did it. And big loss, 40-0 after the first game, and came to the Monday meeting after the weekend game, and all the players are sitting with their heads down, and I looked at them and told them to put their heads up, and I said, "Look, I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm going to learn, and so are you, and you're going to get better." And we certainly did. I learned a lot. I stayed with football over my years of high school teaching and became a phys ed department head. But we went from 0, every margin reduced, and we were ahead of the team that was undefeated in the final game of the year at halftime. We didn't win the game, but 44 kids tried out. 44 kids all played. I just rolled them, rotated them, but everybody got to play. It was a positive experience, the best one I've ever had. And it's paid in spades later in life in opportunities and thank yous and that kind of thing running into those players. So I'm going to,
Hey, Wally, I just let me interject. I'd say I had an 0 and 18 or an 0 and 20 year coach, 0 and 20 one year, and I've always thought, everybody can coach a ton of talent, but when you get a team or a program, and I started a program, a high school program, and we struggled for a bunch of years. That's when you learn to coach, and that's what you learn. To me, that's what you learn what coaching's all about. I mean, you got future NHL guys in your team. You better win hockey games, but it's playing above your weight or punching above your weight as a group of kids. And my high school team were basically all B-level kids, and we were in an A league, and we were over 500 almost every year. So to me, that right on to what you were saying there, Wally. That's what coaching's all about.
Tom, we talked on the phone quite a bit about today, and I said you've been an assistant coach working with different people at different levels. I worked with you, supported you when you won a midget AA championship. You've had great success with the female program, Mount Royal College, and I wonder if you could share some of your stories and experiences that you feel contributed to your success.
I'm just thinking as I'm listening here, and because I'm a phys ed teacher, I had to basically coach almost everything. So what I do is I pass around a thing saying the teams ask for volunteers to coach, various teams, and then I'd fill in the ones that didn't. So my first year teaching, I coached girls gymnastics, and I'd never taken girls like I took men's gymnastics. So we get to the tournament or whatever it was. I didn't realize they had to have music for their mat, their freestyle, whatever it is, tumbling thing. So everybody else has got music, and my girls are just out there doing this routine with no music. So, and try to ask some questions. And the same thing with wrestling. I had no idea about wrestling. I got these little video clip that I can't remember what they were there. You put a thing in it, it'd be a loop to look at different instructions how to do things. But I coached track and cross country. Well, basically I coached everything. My last year teaching, we won the city championship in basketball. And I know nothing about basketball, but I had them play basically 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 with hardly any structure whatsoever. But I also had a kid that played university after, and he's about 6'5", so that was kind of helpful. As far as hockey goes, I had a experience like you guys with the Japanese, with the Koreans. I did them for 8 summers, so I spent 800 hours on the ice with them. They'd come for 96 hours a summer, and I remember my first year they had a kid there. He went to UCLA and took some math course or something, so I asked, he was supposed to be my interpreter. And he goes on the ice and he's showing the kids, but it's like ask my wife to show a drill, and he had no idea. So that I just said, that's it. So I just use the international symbols and use one word coaching or speaking. I'd say skate, shoot, with the international symbols. And they did them absolutely perfectly. And if they did, at the end of the practice, they'd all line up and bow. The captain would lead that. And the same thing that you guys saw in Japan. One day, I had to learn not to raise my voice, because if the coaches, most of the time they just went golfing, but if they did end up on the ice with me, if I raised my voice, like I go, skate, 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 they think I was mad. So they pick out somebody and make them put their hands on the boards and lean over, and they beat them in the ass with their stick. And if they're really mad, the last one they put right in the back of their knees. And another time they were mad at them for something or other. I went in the dressing room at the Oval there, and they were on the floor with their hands behind their back, with their foreheads on their toes and their foreheads, and the coach was making them be like that. But anyways, that was quite an experience, and I helped Willie and then Tim for 8 years at U of C, and we went to 3 nationals, which was kind of neat. And the one national, we're leading like 4-2 or 3-1, I can't remember, 2 minutes left. And we ended up losing in overtime. Then we had to spend the rest of the weekend in Toronto because it was one and you're out kind of a thing. That was with Willie in 1990. But what I did there is I talked to this Todd Sevier the morning practice. I said, Seves, you're really good when you go hard to that net. So we're doing some shooting drill. It cuts hard to the net. He hits a rut in the ice. He crashes into Peter Fry, who had been our goalie since November, and rips his knee up. And then we're playing in the nationals, and Peter dressed, but he couldn't take any shots. He couldn't move. And Grant, can't remember his last name, had to play goal for us. And I'm sure if Peter would have played, we probably would have won the nationals. We're ranked number 1 in Canada all year. But
Tom, could you talk about your Mount Royal girls? I believe you won a championship there.
yeah, well, then I coached my son's teams, and we won, I think, 3 provincial championships in 4 years. And then I went to Mount Royal Women, and they had a pretty good team, but they'd been 50-50. But their goaltender stoned everybody. They won the championship year before. And I took over, and I kind of implemented that it wasn't a social club, it was a hockey team. That's what the athletic director asked me to do. And I think we only lost 2 games all year, and we won the championship. And the next year we won the championship. And the third year we finished first but lost. And what happened once is we went on a 9-game losing streak, and this one girl, she got a concussion, and I didn't realize what a powerful person in the dressing room she was. And when she came back, we started winning. We finished 4th because of that losing streak, and we ended up in the finals because she came back and she'd scored like 5 goals in 3 years, scored 12 goals in the playoffs. So sometimes there's these players that, have something that you don't see as a coach, or they just answer that occasion, whatever. And I had a example like Hell's. I had a team that we went in tournaments, and Mason Raymond and Jeremy Colleton's dad got me to do that team, and Terry Johnson helped me. And I think we lost 1 game the 2 years. That what we did is I said, I'll only coach you if we practice, because I'd been with summer programs, and you go to a practice and the parents say, oh, we arranged a game. So I said, I'm not going to do that. So what we did is we had 2 90-minute practices Saturday and Sunday. So 4 practices a week for 10 weeks. And we just went in the one tournament, Harold Sneps's. And oh yeah, we won a midway tournament in Saskatchewan. But the only games we lost were the finals to Schneps's teams both years. And those 2 guys were on it. Another kid was drafted 2nd overall in the Bantam draft, but he quit at 16. He was better than Jeremy and Mason. And then Ryan Duncan was on that team, and he won the Hobie Baker playing a line with Oshie and Taves. And but he's only 5'6". And when I went to Salzburg, I talked to Pierre about him, and he went there and played about 10 years. He just retired a year or 2 ago. But at Bemidji, that was the guy, Bob Peters was our coach. And Wally asked me to tell this story, is they had and he won 13 national championships. And the first 34 games I played there, we won. Our last 2 games were against University of Calgary. We won 4-1, 6-1. And then we played North Dakota the next weekend, and we split with them. But before we go on the ice, because they weren't allowed to start till October, we had to run around the lake, which was 10 miles. And there was a guy there that had set a scoring record the year before. And we're going around the lake, and I guess a couple of his friends drove up and said, why don't you jump in the car? We'll drive you a few miles. So he did, and the coach heard about it. And I never saw him play. He got cut. And that was the philosophy there of, everybody's got to want to be the most fit guy there is and work as hard as they can. And Peter's died a few months ago, and there's a big thing in the summer. I might go down there, celebration of his life. But he not very technical. We just did pretty fundamental. Like he went to one conference with Toe Blake, I guess, and we played like the Montreal Canadiens, just moving the puck real quick. And he just emphasized working all the time, that we're going to be really fit. And, we were very fit. We trained really hard. And, that single-mindedness of a coach, kind of like Sutter, I think. So that was my best experience as a player playing for somebody. So, that's pretty well what my experience has been.
Tom, I wanted to just Tim to get on to Tim. Tim, you've coached many years, and you've coached at the NHL level and coached at the college level, male and female. You were on a gold medal team and staff in Torino, and you played. And I'm just, so many questions about all your life and experiences, and the things that stuck out in your mind. Like I thought as a player, who is your best coach and to achieve the highest degree of success, and that might be a championship, but it might not. And then yourself, coaching, what have you learned from everything you've done? So share a few of your stories, if you wouldn't mind.
Whew. Well, thanks for that, Wally. What have I learned? We don't have enough time for that. And we wouldn't if you gave me this platform for several weeks. Certainly have evolved in a really large way over the years, and even over the last 5 or 6 years as part of this group and all that we indulge in. There certainly are a couple of stories that come to mind with respect to the championship teams, and I think Tom was part of the first one. My early years at the University of Calgary, we had some really terrific teams, very, very skilled. And the 1 year, I can't remember, Tom, I think it was my second year, maybe the second year, I think. Could have been the first year. We had a pretty dynamic power play. And from late November, running right up to the national championship in March, our power play was running at about 43%, which is a pretty ungodly number, off the charts. Some really, really skilled and intelligent hockey players. We went to the national championship. University of Calgary has never won, and we were, obviously pretty hopeful, and we were definitely one of the favorites. I remember speaking, it was my first year. It was first year, Tom, because I remember speaking with Mike Babcock, because he had just won the previous year with Lethbridge and had moved on to Spokane in Western League. I remember talking to Mike about just his experience at, the Canadian University Championships the year before. And, he was very, very helpful. And one of the things I always had in mind, and Mike kind of reinforced this, was, I think it was one of the old Oklahoma football coaches. I can't quite recall his name. Maybe Hal, being a Minnesota guy. 50s, early 60s, I think. Really successful. I'll think of his name maybe in a minute. Anyway, he always used to say, if you can make your players laugh, or if your players are laughing before a big game, you're in a good spot. So kind of with that in mind, I scrounged up in retrospect, what what I thought was a really pretty funny story that the guys would really enjoy. It involved one of the personalities at UFC. But so I went into the locker room before the game and I told this story, and I expected some pretty big laughs, and I got nothing. I got dead silence. And I walked out of the room and I looked at, I think, Terry and Tom, and I'm like, "Hoo boy, we are tight." So unable to recover from that, we went out. We got a power play in the first minute and a half, 2 minutes of the game. Our 43% power play group fumbled and bumbled their way through that power play, totally ineffective. We were 0 for 10 that day on the power play, and lost 3-1. And it probably, with that team, that was, I mean, I'm sure you've seen, there's some good stories from George's years, but that was probably a team that really could have won, should have won. But we were just tight before the game, and I couldn't put my finger on exactly why. I almost certainly had something to do with that as the coach, but pretty sad story, but also an illustrative story from the point of view. I've always said that on the male side of the game, guys get way too much of a game face on and they don't relax and enjoy the experience quite as much. And on the female side, it's maybe often too far at the other end of the spectrum, where they laugh and giggle and have a good time, and they're not quite serious enough. And there's a middle ground there that's really important to find, I think, in both the male and female games, where you're enjoying the moment and the experience, but you recognize, obviously, the importance of it and the need for focus and determination. But that's sort of one pretty painful story. That was in the Ken Babey era of SAIT as well, I think 94, 95. And he would probably remember those teams with, Kryluck and Jimmy Pegg and Todd Johnson. I mean, we had just a dynamic power play. So that's certainly one championship story, Wally. That's kind of a painful one, honestly.
Now listen, I wonder if Greg Revac is stay on, and Barry Schweitzer's the name of the football coach.
Yeah, you got it. No, it's before Barry, Hal. Even deeper. Oh God, I'm gonna look him
So it
up.
would have been,
Bud Grant?
No, it was I'm pretty sure it was Oklahoma.
Bud Wilkinson was there,
Yeah,
47.
There's the guy. Yeah, Bud
63.
Wilkinson. He's the guy.
Yep.
Won several national championships there, and he always liked to keep it light and have his players relax before a game. Thanks for that, Hal.
Yeah, no problem.
Craig, I'm just curious. We've all been through so many different experiences, and you're in a generation, Craig. Are you still on, Craig? I'm wondering.
Yeah. Greg's still here.
Yeah, I'm just curious about. We've been, and this is typical of guys. I know that I've had the women I've coached with make mention of the fact we like to talk a lot, and we do, and we really like revealing our stories. But Craig, relative to where you're at and what you do in the game, is there anything to be gleaned out of the conversations so far? And I do want to go to Jordan if he's still on later, but I'm really curious, Greg, in terms of the young generation of coaches coming up, the kind of experiences we talked about. Are there any takeaways here for you?
For me, I try to see what are the commonalities, because things obviously are going to change in the environment, and things of how you go about them specifically will change, but the big rocks and pillars, they never change. So I'm just always curious to hear what's similar from your story, from Tim's story, from Hal's story, from Ken's, from Jordan's, etc. So the one thing that I've done with my college program back in the past was what we called Life U. So before Monday practice, we'd have 30 minutes to an hour where we would just choose a topic and go on that. So it could be civil rights when it's MLK weekend. Could be having a police officer come in and speak, social workers, CEOs, whatever. And so it kind of goes to Ken's idea of going beyond the rink, creating more than just hockey, and creating this foundation of good citizens. For me, and where I'm at this point in time, it's just trying to always continually figure out the best way to handle personalities and make sure that they're meshing and pushing forward and not detracting from themselves or the group, as you go through a season, as you go through progression, and the few years that you do have the kids.
Have you got any stories about personalities and what you did or what you learned from in terms of bringing them in line?
Yeah, I feel like most of the personalities aren't a big issue for me. The one that I find the most difficult, and I'd be very curious to hear how you guys have handled in the past, are the kids that are extremely hard on themselves. They come back to the bench, and any little mistake, it's like, gosh darn it, or all the expletives you can ever think of. And it's like you struggle to kind of get them out of their own head and out of their own way sometimes. Those are the ones I find the hardest and most difficult to manage properly, just because even before you're able to help them, they're already so hard on themselves and they're down in the dumps. So they're already defensive with, I'm an idiot, I'm this and that and the other.
In all my years, I've never experienced that. But on the female side, tons. They're really hard on themselves. Hell, you raised your hand. Go ahead.
I've had a few of those, and one in particular, you take a penalty and come back sit in the penalty box and literally just have a meltdown, and then you go back out and you get another penalty within 1 or 2 shifts. And so I used a sports psychologist, and I engaged him with the boy. And after a few sessions, the psychologist called me and he said, I want to talk to the parents. And it turned out the parents were the problem, not the kid. And then at the end of the season, one of the dads said to me, thank you. You've basically saved our family. I had another boy in Pee Wee's, and we won a game. We won by 4 or 5 goals. He was a first-year Pee Wee, and he's in the locker room and he's in tears after the game. And as the other kids left, I went over to talk to him, and he didn't want to talk to me. Finally, he did, and he said, "I'm scared to death to get in the car with my dad because I didn't score a goal." His dad's a good guy, so I went out and talked to his dad and explained to him what was going on. He was horrified. And father and son had a conversation, and the rest of the season was a hell of a lot better. So a lot of times it's just, it's parent expectations laid on young kids on what they think their performance ought to be. And it drives these kids batty. So, but then, I had a kid in juniors, and he wouldn't do anything I asked him to do. And I asked him nicely. And during practice in, February, I just told him, why don't you just leave the ice, take your stuff. I'm going to call the junior team across town. You're traded to them officially right now. I just couldn't put up with it anymore. And I got a 6-pack of beer for him. That was what I got.
Good deal.
Good for me. It was bad for them. I just couldn't take the kid any longer.
Hey, Greg, I was wondering if you had 1 or 2 memorable life you stories.
I've got some funny ones and I've got some not so funny ones. The funniest one, we had a surgeon come in and he was discussing what he did, and he brought up a video example. And I think the guys couldn't shield their eyes fast enough from the work that was being done on the table that day, and they were all like turning pale. which yeah, if it's your first time, it could be quite the experience. So that was overly funny. I'll have to get you a packet. So we have packets for each year, like we have it set out, the things that we're going to cover, and then we bring in some speakers beyond that. Some other memorable ones, let me think real quick. We had one where it was actually the shooting coach of one of the coach's sons. He just actually graduated from the Air Force Academy this past weekend, and he was just sharing a lot of his stories and things that like actually happened to him in Afghanistan. And the kids were able to ask questions. What was it like? What's it like living with PTSD? All of these things, and it got very real, very fast. But the kids were at the edge of their seats, just wanting to glean things from this guy and just expand the horizons of what is like war like and dealing with life and death situations, things like that. So it's definitely a wide range of what we deal with, but I, we have the kids. There's always one person who's a scribe, and it always rotates, and then they have to send out the notes afterwards. So it's always hopefully an opportunity for them to grow not only within the session, but some responsibility with that.
Craig, what you just said about Afghanistan and PTSD, uh, Ken Babey talked about his possible role of dealing with adaptive hockey, which is an expansion of the varieties of sledge hockey that might occur. And he talked about uh, athletes and what they were dealing with and the problems they were having in his programs with the sledge hockey team. So I don't know if Ken is still on with us. Ken, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
I wonder if you could tie that in, because I think the big thing is here when you're talking championships and we're dropping names, and it's really good for our Eagles, but the perspective of the impact you have on the people you work with is most important. So, Ken, put it into perspective now. You've done the hockey bit, you've had 9 championships, and you've gone over to sledge hockey. So I'm just going to leave it with you for a bit here.
Yeah. Well, I guess first of all, I think I really learned a lot about other forms of hockey besides female and male stand-up hockey. Um, for example, in Canada and the United States, there's people that are blind playing ice hockey. There are people that are deaf playing ice hockey. There's actually world championships in both those sports. Canada and the Americans field a team. And in our situation here in Canada, neither one falls under the jurisdiction of Hockey Canada right now. And I know that people at Hockey Canada are looking to expand their role in that area so that Hockey Canada can become more inclusive and diverse and offer equitable opportunities and offer programming, because it's kind of like para hockey. I just went to para national championships here in Leduc past weekend, and there's provincial teams attending it, but they aren't under the jurisdiction of any legislative body. It's just Wild West, and we got to do a better job of that structure in Canada for sure. And that's one of the things that I know Hockey Canada is moving towards, and I want to be a part of that. From maybe my next challenge in my life is to look at, I call it developing a center of excellence for adaptive hockey. And adaptive hockey would be para hockey, blind hockey, deaf hockey, mentally disabled hockey. There's all kinds of stuff going on. We just got to bring it under one portfolio, and I think it would be great. Timing is right in the world today with diversity and inclusion being a key theme in our world, certainly in the Western world, anyways. And I think it'd just be a cool thing to be part of and get involved with. So I'm waiting to hear what's going to shake out about this over the next planning phases at Hockey Canada and those types of things. But back to your point about PTSD and I guess, mental illness in general. Because a lot of them are players that I have on our team, there's two kinds of athletes you'll have in para. Either one inherited some kind of an illness or an accident that's led to some kind of to make them disabled, or they were born with it. And being born with it case is usually around cerebral palsy or spina bifida. Cerebral palsy players now probably are going to have a challenge to make it because just the skill level of the sport now and the speed of the sport has kind of at the high levels, at the national team level, would be challenging. We don't have currently a player, and I don't know many that are playing on the American team either that have cerebral palsy. Spina bifida is definitely there's a few players playing with spina bifida. But the ones that have had, and they've learned to deal with their illness and injury in their lives, the ones that had it come on to them, we have I think about 6 or 7 players. Tyler McGregor, our captain, Liam Hickey, probably one of the best players in the world, that when they were young teenagers, they developed a form of cancer in their legs, and they had to have one of their legs amputated, kind of like Terry Fox. And so they're these players that have it, or they were in a car accident and become paralyzed. I have a couple guys that did trampolining and broke their back and suffered paralysis below their waist. That's why I've never been for tramps for our kids. They always wanted to go on trampolines. I would never let them. Anyways, they had to deal with things in different ways. And, we've had guys with addiction issues. We have guys with alcohol issues. We've had guys with just going through some dark times when they're trying to deal with the tragedy that's come upon them and that sort of stuff. So I learned about empathy. I learned a lot about compassion, but also one of the biggest things I ever learned about coaching these guys is they wanted me. I asked them when I first started. I said, I don't know how I should approach you guys, and they said just approach us as you would your state teams. So I did, and I just expected them, and they want to be treated as high performance athletes, which they are. So that's what we do. And but there is some background stuff going on with them, and you have to be aware of that, and you have to find them resources to help them. And fortunately, for the ones that are on the national program, Canadian Sport Institute has a game plan program which provides clinical psychological support, psychiatry if they need it, and that sort of stuff. But just different ways. And another thing I learned too, and I was fortunate because of my education background, a lot of these players, they learn differently. Well, we know most players don't all learn the same way for sure. But, some of these guys have been on some pretty strong drugs in their lives, may affect their learning abilities, memory, for example, things like that. So, you have to sometimes find different ways to work with them and help them learn hockey. A lot of our guys never played hockey. They just took up hockey as a way to have something positive in their lives. We only have 3 or 4 guys that ever played hockey before they got into para hockey. So we do a lot of teaching of the game of hockey and encouraging them to watch the Stanley Cup playoffs, watch the NHL teams, watch the game of hockey played at a high level, the World Championships, men's and women's, those type of things, so they can get an understanding of how the game's played. So we're all understanding the terminology and the tactics that we're trying to do. Excuse me. But I'm really excited. Hopefully this Center of Excellence for Adaptive Hockey will come to fruition. My vision of this is that would be at WinSport. We provide on ice training, coach development. We could have fitness facilities are all there. There's strength coaches, physiologists there, mental performance consultants are there. We have a sports medicine couple, Dr. Benson and another one are there. So you can tap into all these resources. I'd like to look at applied research, how we can get our sleds faster and more lighter material on them. The Americans, they have a beautiful sleds. They had a guy at North Carolina race driver, I forget this guy's name, but he flew them all out there before the Paralympics and bought them all, got them with his technology of his team for his NASCAR racing, got them all the latest fiber stuff and built them beautiful sleds. And you know, a sled, playing sledge hockey, it's based on your disability, but also, you know, you have to have like the American sleds, the ones I call the best in the world. Theirs fit like a glove, like a good hockey skate would fit a person that's playing stand-up. Can you imagine if you had a hockey skate you tighten it up and your foot was still moving around? Your ability to move and turn and that is very hampered by that. And so some of our sleds are that not to that caliber. So we've got to get there, and there's some technological pieces that I think we can do better, and we should be doing better. And that would be my goal. But yeah, that's just some insight into some of the things we're trying to do in the future, and some of the things you deal with in mental illness on para athletes in general.
Ken, Hell had a question.
Well, I wanted to ask a different one. I'm here looking for a photo of the USA Hockey sled guys because I took some photos of them when they were at a tournament here. You're right; their sleds are really high tech.
Right.
On a different topic though, and we can wait if you want. I just had another thought that I wanted to put out for you guys. We are being asked here to deal and resolve microaggressions in youth hockey. And I think it's coming out of Safe Sport, where kids are, you know, saying inappropriate things to other kids on the ice. And I think, now I'm gonna get the numbers about right, but not 100%. But pre-pandemic, I think, you know, there was maybe 3 official complaints about, you know, it's mostly, you know, racial slurs of some sort. The next year, there were 20. This last year, there were 100. And you know, Minnesota Hockey, as an entity, feels that they need to investigate every one of these complaints, and they're going to, in theory, they haven't done it yet. It's coming up in June. They're going to design or create penalties for players that do this. Now, you guys all played hockey, right? And you probably watched Slapshot.
That was a good show.
That was a good show. Those weren't microaggressions. Those were major, you know, aggressions.
Well, you know what? I just have a comment, a quick one on that is that, well, even comedians, just the other spin of this is that comedians can't be, you know, they're open to criticism now too. Comedians, which comedy is comedy, right? It's just a joke.
Yep.
And most comedians that are good, they joke about usually themselves and their color or their race or whatever. Versus,
Yep.
You know what I mean? But I don't know. I just find the sensitivity a little bit over the top. I get some things should never be said and should never not be allowed, but
Right.
I don't know. I think some of the sensitivity stuff has gone over the top, and in Canada, some spots of Canada, we're feeling the same stuff. That
Yep.
you know, I have friends that are still teaching, and it's a tough to be a teacher in a school system now because everything's so, I don't know, so sensitive about everything. So I don't know. I think definitely there's things you should never say 100%, but some of it's a little bit over the top to me.
Well,
Go
I would
ahead.
add, sorry, Hal, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, as we bring more diversity into the game, boys, girls, whatever in between that is, and then the racial diversity, I just think it's going to be an ongoing and increasing problem. I was told about the Canadian boy that on social media went after the Chaudhry the other night from the Avalanche, and tweeted out that he should kill himself and he should kill his family. And apparently they've tracked him back. He's 14. He was drunk, according to his older brother, and he's now been suspended from his soccer league up there. But it's so sad. All this is so sad because, I always told my players in our locker room, I said, the kids in the other locker room are just like you. They're not the enemy. They're not bad kids. They're just kids like you. And I don't, even at the junior level, there's no need for all that stuff. Just go out and play hard, enjoy the game and have fun. But I just wondered if you guys were seeing it up there. It sounds like you are a little bit too. So.
Well, Hal, I thought of something when you were talking about that, and it relates to the story you told about the problem of the parents.
Oh.
And they're getting that from somewhere, from some environment, and you're raised in certain ways. And so coaches, in a sense, are trying to influence the kid and to get them to see the good in things and do the good in things. But I think the conversations with parents are critical, and whether you have them or not, but they have to have them with themselves. I think it's a bigger social problem than we know. It extends beyond the sport, but the sport can do more maybe to change it. I'm glad Jordan intervened there because I wanted to talk to him. Jordan, you go ahead. You had some thoughts in your mind related to the discussion.
Well, when it comes to these types of things, Hal, there's obviously, for our game to grow, we have to have underrepresented populations joining. And so it's really important that we do have the multicultural aspect to our game and that piece. And as you see that occur, like you're mentioning, then some of these other pieces pop in. But the other piece to it is, I would ask the question, you could ask that of Minnesota hockey, and that's that if these numbers, are they rising naturally, or are they rising because awareness has gone up? And we're far more aware of the appropriateness of this and that piece. So I often use the story of to younger administrators than myself in a school that if you want to see how much bullying is going on in your school, bring in a bullying presenter. Because as soon as you do that and you have a presentation on bullying, well then you'll have a bunch of kids rightly and wrongly calling what's going on bullying.
Yep.
And it takes a lot of communication around it after the fact, but it's the first piece is awareness. The second piece is understanding, in knowing what you're dealing with. And yes, in some instances, as I said, what the kids will be telling us is bullying because it's ongoing and repetitive. But sometimes it's one-off incidents, and we still want to know about the one-off incidents, but we treat it a little differently. So those pieces. The microaggressions piece, as you mentioned, has been around. It was commonplace. Trash talking was an art form, and I think still is to some degree, but it's appropriate level. They talked about Sean Avery in the NHL used to research the team that he was going to play next, and to come up with what he was going to say to what player, and that piece. So, is there a place for the racial piece in it? No, there shouldn't be, but I guess some of that was seen as competitive edge. Um, but what role do we play as coaches and educators? I think I go back to a General Morrison, was an Australian general, and you can search it up. The YouTube video is there. It's been out for quite a while. It was after they'd had some incidents in the Australian Army to do with the degradation of women in their ranks. And he has a line in there that he says, the standard which we accept is what we're willing to walk past, or vice versa. What we're willing to walk past is the standard that we accept. And so as coaches, as educators, we have to hold that standard. We set that standard. Like, I know I'm coaching U18 AA female hockey. I don't swear in my dressing room. I don't yell in my dressing room, and or on the bench. And why is that? It's not because it isn't accepted by parents or players. It's because I wouldn't accept that in a classroom, those same age students. So why would I expect that of myself as a hockey coach? So it's setting that standard, holding to that standard, and moving forward from it. So will there be bumps in the road with this, Hal? Yeah, absolutely. And Ken, to your point, the pendulum swinging piece, I don't know whether it ever gets back to the middle, but I think that the awareness piece is important, that we are more aware. But I think that in the long run, what the most important piece is, if we truly love this game and we truly want it to grow, we have to find ways of including underrepresented populations, whether it's able-bodied or in your sport, Ken, adaptive. That the more access that we can provide people, the better it's going to be.
Nope.
Thanks, Jordan, very much.
That was great.
It's sort of like we've come full circle here. We began, and like most coaches, talking hockey. Now we're talking about the purpose of sport, or the purpose of hockey, and things that really, really matter. And George, I was going to, at some point, had I intervened much earlier, and I'm doing it now. I've known you for a number of years. You've had success with the Bantam AAA teams, dealt with adversity related to parental issues and possibly board issues. And you've recently had major success with your midget AA team, and you're a real committed guy to the female game. We had the National Under 18 Championships on near Calgary here at Okotoks. Jordan volunteered his services for that after school was out, and he spent the weekend as well at the evaluation for the AAA. Not an evaluation, it was just sort of an observation camp for the midget AAA girl prospects. So Jordan, I'm just curious, relative to the whole conversation related to hockey specifically, your experience coaching, lessons you've learned, mistakes you've made, why you've achieved success. And go ahead, Jordan.
Well, I don't know, and I'm going to echo, I think, what everybody else has been saying. Whether I wouldn't say that the championships are the measure of success, and I think I've learned that more as a coach than I ever did as a player. As a player, of course, it was win at all costs, and in many ways, and I was a very emotional type of player. That it was an energy guy. If you wanted to slow me down, the only way of doing that was give me the puck. So it was one of those pieces that forced me also to be a student of the game, because I needed to know what everyone else on the ice was doing, because if I wanted more ice time, or wanted to at least keep my ice time, those higher skilled guys on my lines, if they screwed up, I had to be able to cover for them so that we'd continue to get ice. So it was a different time back then, the way it worked. But As far as coaching has gone, of course, it fits right in with the educational vein and passion that I have. And actually, I attribute my involvement with coaching early on in life as actually the reason why I ended up in education. Because if you'd have told me when I was a teenager that I was going to be a teacher and then later an administrator in a school, I'd have told you you're full of it. But there was no way I was going to be back in schools. And here I am 20 years later, back in schools and enjoying most every day, not every day, but the vast majority I enjoy it. So when it comes to coaching, in your Wally and I crossed paths when I was first coaching Bantam AAA. I had arguably the best team talent-wise in the province, hands down. In that there was, well, there were several of those players have gone on to play NCAA, and the majority, vast majority of them have gone on to post-secondary. But they were a difficult group to coach in the parent group because there's only so much ice to be had, and I believed in development and rolling lines, but in using rolling lines to do that, playing in all situations. But of course, we had parents that wanted their kids to play in particular situations and not, and I didn't know what I didn't know, so it was a lot of work dealing with that parent group. Wally came on into the picture, helping me navigate through that. That season, we won the provincial championship, but I was left feeling a little bit flat in that season with some of the issues that we dealt with parents. The following season, the parents went in with zero expectations because the majority of these talented players had graduated on. But fortunately, we were able to reload with some players and go with, much like Ken had talked about, a hard work ethic as our team identity. And that team went on to once again make it to the provincial final. We lost the provincial final best of three series in 2 overtime games in the final 2 games. Um, I was left feeling a little better about that team because of the way that the development had occurred, and it was development that the parents hadn't necessarily expected. But of course, we had some parents that had gotten themselves on the board for a reason, and they wanted to pick their own coaches. So I was did not return. Was then away from the game a little bit, running a hockey program at my high school and staying involved in it that way. And much like Greg had talked about, that the importance of focus on life skills and seeing hockey as a vehicle rather than the end result piece. So we're looking at it as the hockey as a vehicle to become a better person and better human. And so when I got the opportunity this past season, skipping ahead a little bit, um, it was late in the stages, so I just said with it, I'm going to draft our group out of players with the best character. Yes, I wanted good hockey players, but I wanted kids of great character as well. So I spent the time through the training camp process on the benches, not sitting in the stands. I was on the bench, and the sole reason was I wanted to see the interactions that those kids were having with one another. I wanted to see the body language as I came back to the bench. I wanted to see how they would react when I gave them a suggestion uh, or those pieces. So it was really an important piece of doing that. And unfortunately, I was able to draft a crew that had a lot of character. And we went on this season working on habits from the start of that hard forecheck, hard back check, stick lift. Uh, and the kids went on a 10-0 run coming right out of the gate. And so I was like, well, I can't really do a whole bunch with this group. Their D zone isn't great, but we have to lose a game before they're going to become coachable. So we lost a couple games and went into that piece. Uh, if the other piece that went on was um, continuing to work with those habits and just adding the game. But one of the things interesting that Ken had talked about was the community piece. And we added that to the program this year. That my expectation was the girls were going to be a part of our community. They every time that we played the other Calgary team, there was some sort of service aspect to it. First time through was donations to the food bank. Second time through was donations to Kids Sport, which raises equipment for the for athletes that can't afford it, and then went through a Christmas piece for the Children's Hospital. The girls also volunteered their time around Remembrance Day, setting up crosses for a Field of Crosses tribute on Memorial Drive, and that was a real interesting one. I had an email from parent concerned over that one because they were out in the morning prior to a game. They were out in the rain and or showering kind of cold, and they're setting up these crosses. And a parent sent me an email saying, "Should we not be doing this because we have a game that day?" And I said, "I didn't expect that our kids would be sitting around all day waiting on the game, and that I figured an hour and a half of service to their community would do them some good." Well, the girls went out, played a really good game that afternoon, and won it. Um, the other part that what happened was the girls felt so great about themselves from all of the people, veterans and others, that came up to them that were thanking them because they were wearing their jerseys and they knew who they were, and that piece. And then they invited them back to a sunset ceremony later on in the week, which was pretty awesome for the girls to be a part of. Season continued on with some trials and tribulations, of course, but that character piece shone through. It wasn't without any drama, but the drama that we had was stuff that the kids could navigate and get through with a little bit of support, and that's where that character piece came in. The girls had a great run. We went out to a AAA tournament, even though we were Double A. We did a lot of learning in that tournament as we only won one game, but the learning part was really important. The girls understood that if you didn't take care of your D zone, that you were digging pucks out of your net. And then they realized how heavy of a game that they could play physically. And then they realized that, wow, if you moved the puck and worked as hard as you possibly could, they could compete at that level. So then when we got back to our Double A last game of the season, well, they ran over our closest competition, and then we went into the playoffs, and they ran right through the playoffs and went 5-0 in the provincial tournament to win the championship. It was a team that they bought into the idea that all players would play in all situations. They bought into the idea that it was equitable but not equalized, but we did roll the bench for the most part. And that was something that they saw right in the championship game, that we were playing the best team from the north part of Alberta. And at the end of the first period, it was 0-0. And I leaned to my assistant coaches after and said, "We have them right where we want them." I said, "If it stays tight like this," I said, "they're already down to 2.5 lines of players that they're using. We're still rolling 4." And our girls just got stronger and stronger as the game went on and ended up winning the championship. It was probably one of the most special championships that I've been a part of, including ones that I was part of as a player, just because seeing how that team came together. The message that I gave them right from the start was that our goal was to be better people at the end of this season, and hockey was going to be our vehicle. And then the other part was that it could either be a special season or just a good season, and it was up to them to determine whether it would be that special season. And I had at the end of the season several girls say to me that, "You're right. This was one of those special seasons, and it was because we came together the way we did." And so it was one of those. It was a little bit of lightning in a bottle, and I don't know whether I can replicate it, but we'll definitely try. But it's one of those pieces, as I said to one parent at the rink on the weekend, that if our only measure of success is who lifts the trophy at the end, then out of 11-team league, there's 10 people that didn't, or 10 teams that didn't have success. So you have 190 girls that didn't have success if you go by that model. Whereas If it's about development and about becoming better people, we can all have success.
Jordan, before I go to Tim, I wanted to mention I've worked closely with Jordan for a number of years, and just it was a real pleasure to observe his work with the team this year. And when you're talking about qualities and commitment, and as a coach, uh, it was really an eye opener that looking at Jordan and the time he spent um, with in preparation and respecting the girls as people. He would arrive probably the first guy to be at the rink before the girls and greet them by their names. And he would be the last to leave. That was one of his prerogatives. And I remember Jordan in Okotoks, you're playing a game, there was a bit of a blizzard, and he waited out everybody, and you saw the last. There was a girl that was driving there that had to drive back, and the concern you showed waiting for the whole team and for all the girls, that was consistent. It was authentic. So kudos to you and the job you did, and hopefully you keep hanging in there and doing what you're doing. So, Tim, you had an.
I was going to say, Wally, don't tell my employer how much time I put into hockey.
Well,
he's
I
a
think
hockey guy too, so he knows that. And then the other one, Wally, I'd just add is that these Sharks calls are probably what helped me as much as anything going into it. You talk about addressing the kids by their first name. That came from a conversation Morris brought up about nicknames, and not necessarily understanding where nicknames come from, and that some people have a nickname that they don't like. So I really made a concerted effort this year of using their first names, and yes, there were times that I shortened down to their last names and nicknames and some of those too, but it was that piece of I think that it showed them early on that I was wanting to know them as people, and that piece. So, but yes, the art of coaching piece that's come through in these Sharks calls have been great in learning for me, as well as reinforcement of some of the items that I've already believed in. And so I really appreciate that piece. And it goes back to what Ken was talking about professional learning. And anytime that we can continue to learn, we're going to be better for our players. And that piece. And Wally, just so you know, I know that you probably felt this. Wally was around our team a little bit because he was doing my HP1 evaluation field test. And the girls got to know Wally, and so whenever they would spot Wally, whether it was at a practice or at a game, they would go, "Oh, there's Wally," and then even in the provincial tournament, when they saw that he was there, they were excited that Wally was there because they knew that he was invested as well. So it's that investment piece when you are authentic about it, and obviously if you're on these types of calls, you're in it for the right reasons and have a passion for the sport. So thanks, Wally.
So we're gonna let the founder really of the No Dead Sharks Club, Tim. I've got the coffee cup here in front of me. Filled it twice so far. You go ahead, Tim. You were going to have a topic here that you wanted to bring up.
Well, I guess I should probably ask Jordan if you passed your HP1 or if you found out yet.
Yes, yeah, I passed my HP1, but the funny one about it was Barry Midori, when he found out that Wally was doing mine, he knew the relationship obviously that we have, and he said to me, he goes, "That isn't necessarily going to make your evaluation easier." And I said, "No, it won't." I said, "It'll be the opposite." I said, "Wally will know what questions to ask to drill deeper, whereas somebody that doesn't know me would probably just give me the benefit of the doubt."
Amen. Anyway, I wanted to maybe change horses here a little bit and ask everybody the burning question of the Alberta hockey world right now. which would be, if you were Daryl Sutter, do you or do you not switch your goalies for game 5 tonight? And if you do, or if you don't, why or why not?
I can speak to that, Tim. I thought of it sooner than later, but from a coaching point of view, it's too late to do that. There's a psychological commitment to that one goalie, and it occurred all year. The backup goalie played when they had back-to-backs, and that was sort of it. And he created a number one and a number two goalie situation and a mentality. Obviously, through this series, that philosophy of the confidence that the Markstrom had playing as well as he did all year, he won them many games. He's capable of taking it back. And Markstrom's got a contract that goes beyond this year. So those factors enter into it. I'm not Daryl Sutter, but I might have, after the first game, or the second game, I might, there was opportunities to realize the poor guy is out of his zone. He's playing like a duck out of water and playing dodgeball. He's had great moments, but bad goals in literally every game. And who knows what his state of mind is. So, that's another talk with goalie coaches, with head coaches about when do you pull, when do you yank, how do you use them all year? Are they familiar with, hey, if you win, you're in. If you lose, you're out. If you got that, if you created that. So I'm saying it's too late now to put Vladar in and think he might pull it out. And he might pull it out, but they've got a lot more at stake. I don't think Daryl's going away. He's going to be there next year. And that's my opinion anyway. I don't know what anybody else thinks, but I'm curious about Tom and Ken and their thoughts on that situation.
I'll let Tom go first.
Well, watching that last game, I thought Markstrom played really well in the third period. And I think they got to go with him for the same reason that you said, is, they've got to go with everybody and go back to the way they played, and then they can be successful. Like the last game, they only gave up 27 shots. The 2 games before that, they gave up 40. And I don't remember them giving up 40 shots all year. So I think they just got to go back to everybody playing like they did, and hope they get the breaks. Ken,
Well, I don't know. I'm 50-50. You guys make a lot of good sense, but maybe it's time to shake it up. I mean, they're down to do or die now. So what's I guess you play Markstrom, you lose, and then you'll be saying, well, geez, maybe I should have played our other guy. I don't know. I think I'm leaning towards the opposite of what Tom and Wally said, just to turn the tide maybe. That's just my thoughts, but I'm not coaching the Flames. I don't want to be right now. Tough decision either way, but I don't know. I just feel like you got to maybe take a gamble. You're down 2 games now, 3 games to 1. Yeah, maybe the team will play harder defensively in front of this guy. I agree with Tom Malloy though. Markstrom had a better part of the last part of that last game, but the team just let him hung out to dry. And I just think the Oilers though have just they've got some real mojo going on. They got some real team mojo going on. They're a tight, motivated group right now, and I think they're gonna surprise even further if they get past the Flames.
Ken, I agree with you. And I'm thinking of your years at SAIT and goaltending. And if you had a 1-2 or a 1A and 1B, and either one could play in the big game.
Yep. And you know what? Many times we were fortunate enough that we alternated guys almost all the way through. the season and the playoffs. And whoever had maybe the hottest hand would get the most of the playoffs. But I don't know. I just think, most goalies have two different looks. They might be a similar style, but they have a different look about them, whether it's their size, their catching hand, their movement, whatever. And sometimes it's enough to, throw some teams off. I don't know. I was always prepared to play either one if they could play. Some years we just had one guy and you had to rely on him, but I don't know. I know the Flames, I thought it was one of the announcers, or maybe it was a coach of the Oilers. Didn't he make the statement in an interview? He said, like Mike Smith is relatively fresh. He's only played 38 games. Whereas this other guy, and he said, he didn't say Markstrom, but he said, their goalies had 64 regular season games and then another 10 playoffs games. He's up to 74 games. Maybe that's part of it because, Sutter, he rides his guy all the way, all season.
Well, I'm going to
Greg, Jordan, anybody else? Al's joined us too.
Well, I was surprised that in earlier games, because he'd done that before of putting in the backup in later in a game where Markstrom, after a period where Markstrom hadn't played well. I was surprised that he didn't use him, Vladar, before in that role. The question I'll leave you with, and I have to go because I have an interview, a teacher that I have to interview for here coming up in about 5 minutes, but is more on the Oilers side. They're having success with a guy that, well, it's been documented that has very low character traits in Evander Kane. Do you keep him in future years? Are you okay with it at a pro level, managing that and that sort of thing? And I'll have to watch those responses in video after. Thanks, guys.
Okay. Tim, I'm curious about what you would do with the goaltending tonight.
Well, I'll just maybe give Greg and Al a chance to weigh in. And I don't have any definitive answers, but just curious on everybody's opinion because it's a tough question.
Greg?
I don't have a great opinion because I don't know the whole situation very well. So I feel like I can just give maybe something more general. Like if there's a goalie that gives the team confidence, you ride them. If there's another goalie that can still give confidence, you can always switch to them. But I've been on teams and coach teams where backup goes in and you can just see the bench sink, and that's definitely a problem.
I don't know. I mean, I just started thinking about it the other day because there's so many considerations. Everything you said, Wally, is obviously quite valid. And Tom, I'm, a little bit more in Ken's boat, although I will freely admit, I don't know if I were coaching the team, if I would have the guts to make the change. But it's warranted on several levels. Number one, Markstrom has a terrible track record against Edmonton, not just in this series, obviously, but over time. They have confidence against him. They feel they have his number. And for that reason alone, it might be time to say, hey, plant a seed in the Oilers' mind, a seed of doubt, like if they made the change and Vladar had a good first period, maybe the Oilers start doubting themselves a little bit, and we all know how powerful that can be. And to Ken's point about the mojo going on, that could disrupt that mojo. There's a case on the other side that we're pretty familiar with here in Calgary, going back to the early 90s when the masterful Dave King, and he is a master coach and a wonderful guy, went the way of sticking with his number one, and it arguably cost him his job. When he stuck with Trevor Kidd, they lost the series, and he was, questioned by all the armchair quarterbacks. And as Ken pointed out, it's going to happen one way or the other. If he sticks with Markstrom and they lose, it's going to happen. If he goes with Vladar and they lose, it's going to happen. It's a tough coaching question. And of course, we all, our number one job is, as Wally is always quick to point out, and I totally agree with, transmitting belief in your players and in your team is our number one job as a coach. So Tom's observation about, hey, we just got to be who we are and get back to the drawing board. There's lots of validity in that too, in that approach. But it's a tough question. But I might be leaning the other way in this instance because of the effect on the psychology of the Oilers that it could have. Because they definitely need something dramatic now, for sure. And, you know, Markstrom, the other thing is, you know, Markstrom has had a career year, obviously. He's a tremendous goalie, obviously. But like all goalies, he is subject to stretches of, you know, downtime. And he unfortunately is in one right now. And he's not been, it's not totally been his fault. You know, I won't place all the blame on him. It's certainly not the case. Like Tom said, they gave up far too many scoring opportunities and whatever through the series. But could be time for a change. It's worked in other cases. Whether you have a 1 and a 2 or a 1A and a 1B, there's lots of psychology involved in the game, and this could be the moment. But it'll be interesting to see. I don't know if he's announced one way or the other, but you know, I have total belief that, of course, the Flames could turn it around and, you know, win one game tonight, and then it's game on again. So that's all they have to focus on. We all know that. And what a freaking fabulous game last night, St. Louis and Colorado. Like, holy smokes. You talk about grit, determination, and no quit. Like, wow. Especially when really St. Louis had every right to pack it in when Binnington went down in game 2 or 3 or whatever it was. I mean, their rock goes down, but they have not quit. Like, what a testament to grit and determination and playing like champions. I think you're muted, Wally, if you're wanting to join in.
Yeah, I've just changed my mind because of what you said and what Ken said. And Ken, I think you're a gut coach, and you do what you feel is necessary to win. It's not about the players first; it's about the winning now. And I think the idea of changing the mojo of Vladar's success is critical. This is the last chance. And if it works, then they got another problem. But then the same, if it works, it's the same thing, the same potential to come back like St. Louis is. And now it's a series again. It's a real game. It's real competition. Right now, I don't like watching and feeling sorry for a team. And I do now, watching Calgary, because Edmonton is definitely on a roll, confident, excelling in every area. So, had you not brought up that point related to the mojo statement and the need for something drastic to happen, yeah, I would do that. So we'll see what happens. Now, Al Ramsey, I don't know if, and even Craig, I don't know that they follow the Flames like we do here, but Al, are you on?
Yeah, Al's on. Yeah, you're muted, Al. Or maybe he's stepped away for a second. I just to interject there really quickly, Wally, that, you know, Vladar has, you know, he's shown over the course of the year that he can go in and provide them with a, you know, with an outstanding game. So from that perspective as well, I think the team knows and everybody knows he's capable. But it's definitely a difficult decision.
100%. I got to go, guys. So I'll see you. Okay.
Yeah, Babs, thanks for jumping on.
Good to
Thanks,
see you
Ken.
guys. Take care of yourselves. Enjoy the game tonight.
Yeah.
All right.
Hey, well,
Okay.
can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Everyone, I have an appointment at 11 o'clock. And if Al, your mute is off now. Are you there?
Yeah,
Yep.
he's on. You can hear him, Al. Yeah.
Al,
I got
are
a
you
little bit of a,
following
I get
the
a little bit of a
television
delay
link
every time I
at all?
unmute Wally. I
Go
don't know
ahead,
if you can
Al.
hear that. I got construction going on at my house today, so.
Hmm.
Yeah, we've been following the Calgary Edmonton series real close. From the other side, though, I'm an Edmonton fan, so.
Well,
As an Edmonton fan, it's been fantastic. Absolutely love watching the series, and watching Connor and Kane and Draisaitl has just been a pleasure. They look like they're playing. They look like they're having a lot of fun out there. You know what I mean? It looks like they're playing free, like they're having fun, and everything is clicking for them. So we've been really enjoying that.
if you were Daryl Sutter, Al, would you be changing your goalies?
Is there any real good option? You know what I mean? Like I don't know that it's totally the goalie's fault. Like I feel like Edmonton's played a real solid series, and obviously their big guns are firing at all cylinders right now. So I don't personally think that it really matters who he puts in. It might be good just for his confidence for the team to shake something up, but I don't think with the way those guys are playing, I don't think it matters what they do at this point. Sorry to say that, Calgary fans, but
Careful now, it's not quite over yet.
I know, spoke too soon, but no, we've been really enjoying it, and again, it's so fun to watch, especially watching Connor McDavid with my son, and watching some of the things that he does and talking about it with the boy about like getting his thoughts on what he's doing and having him watch stuff, and we obviously we're big in the Power Edge Pro. We got our clinic starting tonight, and a lot of the stuff that we do on the ice is part of those skills. Obviously not anywhere near the level that he does it at, but a lot of the footwork and a lot of the stick handling stuff is is right out of based on what he does, or very similar to what he does. So we're pretty excited to get started with that tonight with the boy and his teammates.
Guys, I wanted to interject on the goalies, and relative to minor hockey, we generally alternate. And with Jordan, he did that all year, but he really asked me a number of times whether getting into the final he had to win a playoff game, whether one goalie was better than the other, but they were both quite good. But it was a 1A, 1B situation. He alternated them all year, and he stuck with it all year, and it worked for him. When I coached and won a city Bantam championship, I went out of rotation, and I know a Pee-wee coach who in the provincial finals went out of rotation. There wasn't communication about that with the players, with the goalies, and with the parents, and he's not invited back. So that's just my take in minor hockey. You get into the playoffs.
Go ahead, Al. Go ahead, Al.
Who, me?
Yeah.
Oh, I was just saying I gotta go. And I'm traveling next week, actually the next 2 weeks, but I'll try to figure out how to get on. But I appreciate all your notes, and I would say change goalie, but that's what I would do. And I watched the Wild, bring in what's his name, the Flower from Chicago, and they played him all through the playoffs. And Cam Talbot had played all year, and Cam didn't play a minute. But the players quit playing in front of him. So I'm not sure it's Talbot's fault, or Fleury's fault, but he let some pretty soft one of those games. So I got to run, guys. Thanks. It's always a pleasure. This is the highlight of my week. So it's great to chat with you all. So,
Okay, Sal.
take care.
Take care.
As much as I have allegiance to St. Louis for obvious reasons, it is pretty, and Calgary, but it is pretty tantalizing to think about watching McDavid and McKinnon go head to head. And if you wanted to say McDavid and Draisaitl and McKinnon and Makar go head to head, would be something pretty special to watch. If they can maintain their level, that would be pretty amazing.
Well,
But I hope it doesn't happen.
Great stuff, guys. I want to thank you all for coming on. Al, thank you very much for joining us, even though it was late. And the Power Edge Pro guy, Tim and I watched, Quinn spoke, and Tim talked to him after it was at a coaches conference in Red Deer. And of course, he talked to him about stick length because he was curious about Quinn's philosophy on stick length. But I really like it because of the mastery of edges, jumping and landing on different feet, and handling a puck at the same time. The jumping and landing to me is fundamental. It's plyometrics, and the strength of landing is much more difficult than the jumping. So it's the G-force effect, and I really think that it's a fantastic tool. And McDavid's a living example of the effectiveness of it. So, listen, I've got to run. I have an appointment at 11, so I'm going to stop the recording now, and I have to leave now. But if you guys want to stay on, talk anything, thanks. The session was great. We were hoping that Carla would be on to talk about her ed school experience. I talked to her yesterday, and she mentioned, Tim, that we'll have to have a face-to-face meeting in the old Cadence place again sooner than later. And I would still like to continue this, so maybe we can meet Wednesday and try this on Thursday, but we'll see. So
yeah, I'd like to chat with her about her mentoring experience a couple of weekends ago, because I had a good chat with her after my experience, and I filled her in on all the mistakes I made as when I was mentoring at Alberta Cup. Anyway, that'd be a good topic for another day too. But I would love to meet with her. And great session, guys. We'll see you again hopefully next week.